interesting. Very interesting. Oh, hello, and welcome to the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis vlog. I'm Stuart McLean, your host and progenitor of said hypothesis. And in this episode, I want to get into into describing the structure and anatomy of a field. What exactly is a physical field? That is the million-dollar question now, isn't it? So, in order to present this, it has to be presented fully in the context of everything that the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis is putting forth. As its founding principle, I say fractal geometry is the cosmological principle, and scale invariance and the laws of self-similarity apply when studying systems. So in order to understand the Big Bang system, in which it starts with the birth of an unknown gravitational singularity, I look to study the birth of a known gravitational singularity inside our universe and study its pattern such that I can infer it to the larger scale of the universe as a whole. Because fractal geometry is a cosmological principle and self-similar patterns repeat irrespective of scale. So that's my mathematical and philosophical foundation for which I build my hypothesis. So there are two ways a black hole can be born. It can be born either in a hypernova or in a kilonova. In first thinking about this idea of studying the birth of a black hole inside our universe, I first proposed it in the context of a hypernova. Hypernova is the core collapse of a massive star, and the star is of such sufficient weight and density that it collapses down into becoming a black hole. However, I renamed it the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis because that is the other way a black hole can be born, and it all comes down to the large-scale anisotropies of the cosmic microwave background radiation. In presenting my argument, I just go back to the home page, so this is where it becomes much easier to see. There we go. So this is the actual cosmic microwave background radiation as seen from the Planck missions. So this is a Molly-Weld projection of the actual Planck data. And as you can see, down in the southern hemisphere, there is both a cold spot, a massive void called the Eridanus supervoid, and this adjacent hotspot. And then we watch these two spirals come out from one another, two twin spirals. You can see it better here, where we're just looking at the large-scale anisotropies themselves, and we can see one cold spiral and one hot spiral closing in on each other. And essentially, I relate that to the gravitational waves that a kilonova ripples out, and that becomes my key. That is the key signature within the cosmic microwave background radiation that gives voice to the Big Bang Kilonova hypothesis. Another thing that gives voice to it is being able to answer the question, why is the universe homogeneous and isotropic? In studying a kilonova, it involves the binary merger of two neutron stars. And a neutron star in itself is effectively a massive atomic nucleus that is, say, 10 to 12 kilometers wide inside our universe. In presenting my argument, I create a construction called the superverse, into which our entrapped universe of spacetime is expanding. So I'll just bring up some graphics that show this principle of one universe expanding inside another. Just bear with me. So I've done lots and lots of animations and stuff showing various principles. No, that's not the one. That's the one. So effectively, I look at a black hole and think about it in terms of it's blowing up these entrapped bubbles of space-time within the volume of a given universe. Inside our universe, a black hole gives rise to a pair of entrapped surfaces of space-time that effectively grow, and then but that subverse is of a much smaller scale. That scale representation between the larger superverse and our universe, I depict using the geometry, the Cartesian coordinate grid system that's superimposed on both the background and upon the inflating bubbles of entrapped space-time. Another one is talking about Fermi bubbles. So Fermi bubbles are these gamma ray formations that have been seen by the Fermi X-ray telescope. These bubbles in the void that are in the northern and the southern polar regions of our Milky Way galaxy are linked via the south chimney and north chimney to the Sagittarius A star supermassive black hole at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, and we're seeing these volumes of void emitting X-ray, and it's believed to be coming from the interaction of expulsion from the supermassive black hole at the center of our galaxy. But in presenting my argument, I say that it's also inflating two entrapped surfaces of space-time that are subverses. These entrapped manifolds of space-time effectively are miniature universes inside our own universe, and we've got two of them, one in the southern polar region and one in the northern polar region of the void of our Milky Way galaxy. So I've got a few more animations that show this up close. You've got tiny wee galaxies inside a larger galaxy, and another way that I picture this is using Penrose's space-time diagram of a rotational black hole. As we travel in through the black hole, we go through the wormhole, and out via the rotational white hole into the new entrapped subverse universe. And we come out into that universe. This universe of a much smaller scale has galaxies, and we fly into one of those galaxies. We meet the same pattern, another black hole, or much smaller scale, which we then fall into. and we fall into the subverse of that given universe out into a new universe, this new smaller sub universe of our original. And so the process repeats recursively as we again fall into a black hole, out through the rotational white hole, and into the even smaller universe. So that's that in a summary is what I mean. So that in a summary is what I mean by superverse, our universe, subverse. It's one of the same repeating pattern happening, the same type of shape and structure of each universe is the same shape and structure. Each one mirrors the other. But like a Russian doll, like a Russian doll, each one is entrapped within the other. So that in summary is the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis. And for my full argument on it, I point you to my main thesis here, which I did towards the end of 2021. I'm currently working on a new film. At the moment, I'm calling them podcasts, but really, this is the podcast, and these are really more becoming the singular pieces of work upon which all my reasoning and logic are based. So, in my prior one, the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis, I actually present the actual hypothesis in terms of a kilonova. And one of the main lines I'm coming at in this piece is through the lens of understanding the importance of rotation. So prior to me developing my Big Bang Kilonova hypothesis, it was a Big Bang hypernova hypothesis. And in this particular essay, I realized the importance that rotation plays in both a hypernova and in a kilonova. And then in realizing that importance, coupled with the large-scale anisotropies having this very distinct gravitational spin helical spiral pattern, it was like Cinderella. The shoe fit. If the shoe fits, well, then it's a kilonova. And so I present it, but along with the importance of rotation. And particular importance of rotation plays really key with the cosmic microwave background radiation, because first, I present evidence that the large-scale anisotropies are due to rotation, particularly coming from Lionel Shamir's work. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking for Lionel Shamir's work. Oh, wait, is that Kilonova? Yeah, so here's Lionel Shamir's work. And here's the quadrupole of the cosmic microwave background radiation. And here's his map of spiral galaxies that have a asymmetry in their observational spinward direction. And so the importance here is that we've got a measurable, observable feature that we're seeing in galaxies that is linked to the rotation, either the spinward direction, and the asymmetry maps are mapping up with the quadrupole maps of the cosmic microwave background radiation. So, and in effect, it shows that the universe is in rotation. In rotation to what exactly? To a stationary observer in the superverse, according according to my according to the like logic I'm proposing. The next piece of the argument here is presenting a what are called Bianchi universes, where these are mathematical universes that start out with a homogeneous description, but then don't exactly evolve, but then don't exactly, but are not necessarily isotropic. And so it's a way of it's been a way of exploring what is the causational effect of these large scale anisotropies that we encounter upon the cosmic microwave background radiation. And in presenting the one successful real model, this Bianchi 7H universe, I show that this universe is linked to rotation. Now, there is an argument to be made. There is an argument to be made about dark energy, and that these models are invalid because they don't account for dark energy. But given the way the Big Bang Kilonova hypothesis accounts for dark energy, essentially I say it is that mass energy density that belongs to the superverse that is causally disconnected from our own entrapped manifold of space-time that is expanding into. And so I take something like the Boite supervoid and say that is a massive star of the superverse, measuring 330 million light years in diameter. And our universe flows around it, which is what this animation is showing here. It's a fluid simulation of water pouring over the star. And so from another animation of it, I have a grey background here because of that particular moment in time doing this animation. I didn't really have any vision of what the superverse is. I had this object of the superverse and our universe, the blue smoke, flowing around it. And to us, it would look like there is a body, an alien body coming into the presence of our universe, and our universe is flowing around it. And so and this big open void opens up. So the actual proof that our universe does flow around these volumes of dark energy comes in Brent R. Tully's work. So if I get Brent, here we are. So Brent R. Tully's work shows this is a map of the local void. If I open this up, I'm go to the actual. So this is Brent R. Tully's paper, Cosmological of the Local Void, where I get that image. Zoom in on this picture. So here's our Milky Way galaxy, and on the other side of the Milky Way galaxy, on the far side from us, there's this big volume of nothingness that we have come to call the local supervoid, or just a local void. And we see, and what we see is galaxies flowing around the volume of this void, all moving in the same direction. Now, in comparison to this, you have the Lambda CDM model, which says with inflation theory, it says that dark energy coalesces like little, starts off as like little soap bubbles, and those bubbles grow and merge and grow bigger and bigger and bigger until they become these growing voids that merge together, and they grow outwards, exerting the same force in all directions. So the galaxies should be moving away in all the all directions. They shouldn't become moving it around the volume of the void in one direction. So that's essentially the Big Bang Kilonova hypothesis in a nutshell. Oh yes, the reason the universe is homogeneous and isotropic is the neutron stars are are essentially large atomic nucleuses. Effectively, it is what we call the primeval atom. And now, the idea of the primeval atom was by George Lemaitre. George Lemaitre is the father of the Big Bang theory. He's not known for his idea of the primeval atom, but that's something I'm resurrecting and recognize. So, effectively, George Lemaitre could be said to have almost envisioned the Big Bang Kilonova hypothesis in his proposal of the primeval atom, but he framed his work in the context of physics of the 1920s, which was where the cutting edge was with nuclear fission, and then later fusion. But he imagined it as this big primeval atom that splits apart and splits apart and splits apart. But the contents of an atomic nucleus, where it's all composed of neutrons, and neutrons being identical to one another, form this one single homogeneous mass. Now, nature, by itself, when it compacts things together, forms crystalline structures. So effectively, a neutron star we described as a compact neutron lattice. So I'll find the animations showing this compact neutron lattice. Yes, so here we are. Here's the animation. Effectively, this is showing the internal structure of a neutron star as a isotropic or cubic lattice of neutrons, each one being identical, each one being made up of the same number of up quarks and down quarks. So effectively, we have a homogeneous form of matter because every particle is the same, every neutron is the same, being composed of the same number of quarks and gluons inside, and they are arranged in an isotropic lattice. Hence the universe. Hence why a neutron star is the ideal initial conditions for starting a universe, because it is homogeneous and isotropic. Thus, we live in a universe where the laws of physics are the same everywhere, where galaxies on one side of the universe are the same as galaxies on the other side of the universe, both each having supermassive black holes, having stars, those stars undergoing fusion, operating under the same laws of physics. That's what it means when cosmologists say the universe is homogeneous and isotropic. That's why it is the standard assumption. But by saying fractal geometry is a cosmological principle, I'm able to use a kilonova as the causal mechanism for the actual Big Bang itself, and thus I'm able to answer the question, why is the universe homogeneous and isotropic? And it's the same for George Lemaitre. He first proposed it in the form of the primeval atom. So I think with that said, I can now come on to the latest piece of work that I've been building over the last. Well, this forms like one of the main arguments that I've been trying to like put together in terms. So my previous argument was it, it understood the importance of rotation. In this, I'm looking at the consequences of trying to understand the consequences of saying, if I take the electromagnetic field and tear it apart, I get two new entrapped surfaces of space-time. Effectively, I'm coming up with the ideas relating to, well, how does this actually happen? What does it mean for an entrapped surface of space-time? And coupled to this is, what is a field? And so it used to be thought that particles were the building blocks of the universe. But in studying particles, we find that particles are but vibrations, packets of energy, or essentially packets of energy that are vibrations on a given omnipotent field. One field being the quark field, another one being the electron field, the other one being the Higgs field. These are quantum fields as described by quantum electrodynamics and quantum chromodynamics. But then you've got the gravitational field, which is different. It's described by general relativity. And so modern physics has been trying to figure out, how does this description of general relativity with its fields of gravity and all the other fields, which are quantum, how do these two fit together? Well, fractal geometry is the cosmological principle, and self-similar patterns repeat irrespective of scale. And it's probably one of the hardest arguments that I've been trying to put together, and trying to think, should we think about a black hole in a different manner, or should we think about fundamental particles in a different manner? So I'm saying, like, well, a black hole is a particle on the gravitational field. What does that mean? Or what would an electron look like if we thought about it as being a black hole, or photons, and it's one of the things I try to capture in my artwork, where I represent a particle having a light inside it, or like particular color, but then I put an event horizon around it, as if the particle itself is bending space-time itself, because I think that's what's actually happening. And the way I consider this is particularly with refractive index. Take a block of glass, shine a light into it, that you can see the light change its angle direction. Essentially a property called index refraction, or the refractive index. When material passes from a less dense medium, such as air or vacuum, and travels into a more dense, transparent medium, such as water or glass, then it bends. And the only other thing that bends light is a gravitational field. Uh, as light passes as distant starlight passes uh, as it travels through space towards say our sun, for instance, or any other large body, the path of light changes, and we're seeing that, and this is what general relativity predicts, how light is being effectively refracted by the gravitational mass of a sun or any other body. But when you break that down down to a single particle, say like an electron, isn't the same pattern in effect. And but the thing that really gave this voice in a more, well, in a more formalized way, in the proper way, is in this formulation of what's called ER equals EPR. And it was something that I talked about in my previous podcast, where we see where the only real mathematical connection that we've managed to find between quantum mechanics and general relativity is in this idea of a wormhole being, or two quantum particles being entangled, having a wormhole existing in between them, and then and so what what has what has happened since I first wrote this is that this was at the time a mathematical conjecture. It's not so much a mathematical conjecture now, as in this is something that's actually now happened and has actually been tested in a lab using Google's Sycamore quantum AI processor, and using a series of 9 qubits. They managed to generate a quantum wormhole through the electromagnetic field and transmit information through that wormhole such that it came out on the other side of the processor simultaneously. While also they detected very strong and production of negative energy within their quantum system, or on the quantum processor. And I put it like that because negative energy in the classical world doesn't exist, but in the quantum world it does exist. And so for negative energy to exist in the quantum world and actually be a physical thing, well, that's something new. Along with actually transmitting information through a quantum wormhole. Now, this has to be distinguished from a gravitational wormhole, as one that might be described by two two black holes that are in an entangled state. But it's the same pattern that's happening, because fractal geometry is a cosmological principle, and self-similar patterns repeat themselves irrespective of scale, and the only connection between quantum mechanics and general relativity is ER equals EPR, which is the embodiment, the mathematical embodiment of this, which is now backed up by by an experiment that's been done by Google, Stanford, soon be reproduced by IBM, Caltech, MIT, Princeton, all top names are putting their weight behind this. And this is actually something that's probably like really fractured. Like you can I've noticed that there are physicists for this, and then there's physicists like really hate this. I mean, we hate it with a passion, and I think it really comes down to this distinction between saying, look, this is a wormhole through the gravitational field between two entangled black holes. Of course, the way I argue it is that the black hole is in fact in that the wormhole inside of the rotational black hole is entrapped. It's not going anywhere. And hence the only place where your new universes can grow is in the polar regions of the black around the black hole itself. But they are entrapped surfaces of space-time. There's no there's no kind of higher dimensional doorway to higher dimensions. We haven't found any evidence of higher dimensions. The LHC has been looking for it. None has been found. But of course, the alternative to that I think about it, is ER equals EPR is a string theory production which has 11 dimensions, but there is a very important interpretation here which just basically comes down to string theory can't tell you anything about waveform collapse. Maybe we should do that one there. Let's do waveform collapse. Because this is one of the ideas that has been like that's probably the graphic I want. This one here. No. Wait. This is a nice one that helps show it. Open image, new tab. See, the idea of waveform collapse is that you have your wave function that's spread out, and being spread out, it exists in a state of superpositions. It is neither one nor the other. So let's take a binary measurement like spin. It's either up or down, or say with color, it could be red or green. We just give them arbitrary. Quantum mechanics gives arbitrary names to particular properties. Spin is intrinsic angular momentum and rotation. So, and it's either spin up or spin down. But the wave function exists as the state of those two possibilities. It is in one, and it's also in the other. Until the point of measurement comes along and it collapses down into a peak that is described, I would say effectively described by Dirac's operator or Dirac's function. It essentially falls down and creates this peak. And that peak is very important. If you think about black holes, it's this peak here. This is a gamma ray burst at the larger scale. There's waveform collapse for you. Let me bring the two together. So, you have a wave of possibilities which collapses down into a single beam that has a specific direction through our spatial dimension. But my whole ideas are based upon entrapped surfaces of space-time and and self-similar patterns repeating themselves irrespective of scale. So I'm thinking of I look at this one picture here I've done where you've got two gamma rays forming. And let me actually just bring up the animation for that. So showing you the clip because I actually did the animation. Yeah, that's the one. So you've got these two formations that come out. And the way I'm modeling this is using just a magnetic field. But the stronger the magnetic field, the tighter the particles become within the field. And so I'm thinking about this. I'm looking at this and thinking, is that waveform collapse? Is that what's really happening at the quantum level? Is like there a gamma ray burst? And if I go to in thinking about gamma ray burst and waveform collapse, you've got the annihilation of an electron and a positron, and two gamma rays that come out at 180 degrees from one another. I was thinking, and that's what gave me, that's what led me to see the pattern of astrophysical jets or gamma ray bursts being released in two polar opposite directions from one another. But it's in thinking about how that beam tightens up into a single line. I'm thinking that's waveform collapse. So, in effect, there is a lot of motivation for trying to think like this. Another, why is the wave function the wave function? What can general relativity tell us about why a wave function is a wave function? This reality where the spin is both up and the spin is down at the same time. How can you have this what kind of craziness can lead to this? Lead to this, and it comes down to this here. So this is a Penrose diagram showing a Penrose. So yeah, it's Cartan Penrose diagram showing the solution of a rotational black hole and what the mathematics of it show. So effectively, this is what does the mathematics of general relativity tell us about rotating bodies, particularly rotating black holes, and what is the internal structure of that rotational black hole? What is the anatomy of of a particle upon the gravitational field? And we get, and the solution we get is that it forms these entrapped surfaces of space-time. These two, so for a black hole inside our universe, this new universe and this new parallel universe will be the balloon subverses that I was previously talking about. The black hole, inside the black hole, you have what is effectively forming one of the main bases for. I think if I could try and boil anything down to its most fundamental level, it comes down to this relationship between space and time and how it inverts inside a black hole. So so with special relativity, the closer you as you move in the frame of reference, which moves, and if that frame of reference is moving close to the speed of light, you get time and spatial contraction, and then inversely dilation as the gravitational incline towards the black, as we travel in towards the black hole increases. The same effect occurs in how space-time is effectively crushed down to almost nothing. And I wonder, so I've got, so here's a good way of showing this. So as you move closer and closer to the black hole, the very metric of space is being clapped down to until it is absolutely nothing at the event horizon of the black hole itself. A meter is defined by the length a photon travels in a vacuum in a given period of time. So the length a photon travels in a given period is becoming smaller and smaller as the very metric of space-time is crushed down as we move towards the black hole itself. It's not only space that's being crushed down, time is being crushed down. So, if I've got another. I'm trying to see if I've got the other graphic with the clock. I've superposed a clock in it and then just the flow of the clock to show it. But say we've got a probe sending out regular beams back out as it falls in towards the black hole. If we I was hoping I had the animation. Yes. So follow a beam of a photon as it travels away from a black hole as it escapes, and because it's initially compact, this regional compact spacetime, as it decompacts as it moves further and further away, its light is stretched, so it starts to move from blue to green to yellow to orange and then red before finally hitting our external observer and it's so there. I've got another graphic, but what about space time as it actually crosses crosses the event horizon of a black hole? Well, space-time is compressed down along with the metric of time, and as we cross over the event horizon of a black hole, there's a dimension swap. Space becomes time, and time becomes space. And so we exist in an area where the blue arrows represent a temporal dimension. So it's representing here showing a three-dimensional temporal space with only one path of travel, and that one path of travel is the spatial dimension, which was previously the temporal dimension. And this is reflected in the coloring of the coloring of the contour lines within the Penrose diagram. Red is a spatial dimension, blue is a temporal. So in this entrapped volume of the universe, we have the far distant past, and the infinite distant future. And then on the corners, we have infinite far off expanse in space. So this point here is infinitely far away from the black hole, and this point here is at the black hole itself, or the event horizon of the black hole. But if we look inside the black hole, we see that the two are inversed. Space has become time, and time has become space. And so, in thinking about what structure gives rise to such a bizarre thing as a wave function in quantum mechanics. Well, if you exist in a temporal geodesic, the terminology I found is an area where you have 3 dimensions of space and 1 dimension of time, and one unidirectional arrow of time. It's called a spatial geodesic, and one such spatial geodesic is a universe. Another such spatial geodesic is a wormhole. But inside a wormhole, because the geometry of causality is broken. But the wormhole is itself entrapped between the black hole and its time reverse solution, the white hole, both of which are called temporal geodesics. And temporal geodesics have 3 dimensions of 3 temporal dimensions. So if I move my left, or I could be moving into my past. I move to the right, I move into the future. I move forward, I move into the future, I move backwards, I move into the past. So I can navigate all the temporal timelines. But there's only one unidirectional path, or to put it better, there is only one dimensional path between one side of the quantum CPU and the other side of the quantum CPU through this anti-de Sitter space within the quantum CPU. But of course, the caveat being that this is a wormhole through the electromagnetic field, vice versa being a wormhole in the gravitational field. But at the end of in effect, what I'm trying to say is we should be thinking about the internal structure of our quantum fields as being like this. Inside there is a wormhole. There is this anti-de Sitter space that gives rise to this behavior that has now been experimentally proven. So it's no longer just conjecture. It's backed up by one of the latest and greatest experiments, and soon will be reproduced. I'm sticking a lot of money on the reproduction, so well, maybe I should take a bet for it. Don't know. Do betting shops offer odds on quantum experiments? I'm sure someone does. I'm sure someone must specialize in that particular form of betting. But I'm saying we should be thinking about the internal structure of the One Electron Universe in a similar manner, and this is both backed up mathematically by ER equals EPR, the only link that exists between quantum mechanics and general relativity. That is backed up by the understanding that fractal geometry is the actual cosmological principle, and self-similar patterns repeat themselves irrespective of scale. And here's an important point about this, particularly in context of the second law of thermodynamics, which says that any given system will move forward in time from a state of being ordered to being a state of disorder. It will always increase in entropy. That's what effectively increase in the entropy means. It means increase in the amount of disorder. So we go from so in the beginning there was this order: super neutrons packed into a homogeneous and isotropic neutron star. That's our beginning process. Two of those said neutron stars come close to each other and orbit each other. And as they orbit each other, they form gravitational waves which ripple out across the fabric of the superverse. These large-scale ripples will eventually in turn become the large-scale anisotropies of the cosmic microwave background radiation. And then the two collide, and in turn, a new black hole is born inside a new rotational black hole is born inside the superverse. Coming back to this, as that new rotational black hole is born, so too is the entrapped wormhole and the entrapped rotational white hole on the other side, which then causes two new balloon universes to be inflated from one another in polar opposite directions. So our universe of matter, our universe of antimatter over on the other side. So our universe inflates inside the superverse. And so it is for how dark matter forms inside our universe. Namely, we've got dark matter halos that go on to become subverses, which we have no particle representation of, but we do see the gravitational lensing effect of them, and we call it dark matter. And at the center of this is this one single map, which gives large amounts of motivation in talking about temporal geodesics and entrapped wormholes and entangled particles. I would say, so coming back to the second law of thermodynamics, I haven't quite finished that one. Second law of thermodynamics says, and a system goes from order to disorder. It goes from, or another way of putting it is, it goes from a linear form of behavior to a more nonlinear form of behavior. Linear dynamics give way to nonlinear dynamics, and chaos arises. Chaos gives rise to fractals, and the complexity of that arises from nature. Well, one complexity is in saying that the Big Bang was caused by a kilonova, and a kilonova inside our universe gives birth to large gold nuclei. Effectively, a kilonova is the Philosopher's Stone, and one consequence of that is, well, it is the Philosopher's Stone, and one consequence of that is, that's why I'm reading this book. It's embedded in everything. It's embedded in our myth. It's embedded in everything. And it has been like, oh. So that's the science. So that's the motivational behind. That's the thing that comes from the hard physics in terms of motivation. Why I'm saying we should think of the one electron universe as having this anatomy, where, but in order to, but my conviction is not just a mathematical one. I need to present new evidence, but the only way of presenting this is you're either going to believe the guy or you're not. It's a matter of belief. And so that's where we'll continue. That's where I'll continue on next. So the evidence I want to present is near life or near death experiences. And essentially, there is this absolute mystery in the heart of medicine. People are coming who are being resuscitated, say like they have a heart attack, and then they get the defibrillators put on them and get resuscitated, and they come back, and they talk about this experience of the afterlife, of the journey through the afterlife. And modern science simply cannot explain it. Oh, there's explanations about DMT and various effects on the mind and stuff, but they really don't. They don't do any justice to it. In fact, this is probably why I consider Eben Alexander's experience to be so powerful, because he is a neurosurgeon. He did lecture at MIT. Of all people in the world who know about this and what the field of neuroscience has to say about this, he doesn't have a response. And one of the things that causes me to believe Eben Alexander's account is I'm listening to a man who's been whose worldview has completely and utterly radically changed. It has been more or less transformed by this experience that he has gone through. But for various like YouTube copyright reasons, I'll post a link to it and you can watch it. But it was in his description of his journey through the afterlife, and description of the effects of time and causality within that place, how he experienced. He's talking about things like life reviews, where he's suddenly reliving a moment or large sections of previous lives that his soul has gone through. I mean, in fact, he can't even remember the life that he just left. And he says as much once he's in that place. Because effectively what I believe is that as a human, I have an immortal soul. I believe all life at its fundamental level has, if you were to frame it in sort of holographic theory of Leonard Susskind, where everything is information, then the information that makes me me, that is the thing that the universe preserves, and that information is my immortal soul. That's what I believe. Body is this body is mortal. I will die one day, but the soul lives on, and there is no explanation for this. In fact, science or materialistic science has got to the point to like saying, well, matter's matter and things are made up of atoms and that's it. Can't explain this. But it's his very, very descriptions of, if I was looking for someone who was living in a in a in a temporal geodesic, like a black hole, and moving up from the universe, moving through a black hole and out into the wormhole, or what he calls the core, where he talks about how it collapses down, or how space and time collapses down on itself. He's talking. He's actually giving a very, very accurate description of what the mathematics describe the cause and effect of causality within a wormhole, which is completely and utterly broken. Great place for your soul to pass on to, and live as it plans its future life for reincarnation back out into the universe. It was listening to Eben Alexander's description and his very detailed description that really focused this idea of there being inside the One Electron Universe, this other universe that he's describing, that he's traveling into as he departs from this world and moves back into the realm of the spiritual, or actually the realm which is physically inside the One Electron Universe, as John Archibald Wheeler called it. And he's moving in, he's following the musical spiral that he talks about. He talks about following this musical spiral up out into the valley and then into the core, where he meets what effectively is more or less God. It is a complete and absolute honest description of it. And so when I say when I say this is not just a mathematical belief that is now backed up with evidence that shows us that the reality of the One Electron Universe is this by the traversable wormhole. Materialistic physics has got it wrong, and that's coming from physics, upon which their foundation is based, and that's about to cave in itself, and it is, and I think it's going to be one of the main debates within physics. Another debate within physics, which is absolute manna from heaven for me, which I just learned about half an hour ago. While doing this, well, I'll explain the context of it, because I was explaining the context earlier when I was talking about like the importance of Sumir's work was to show that there is an observable measurable property, the spinward direction of spiral galaxies, and their asymmetry when compared to one another. And this asymmetry is seen both in the dipole map of the CMB. So this is the CMB dipole map, and this is the spinward direction of galaxies, or the asymmetry of spinward direction of galaxies map. And then we have the same, he did the same for the quadrupole map, showing that the importance for this for me is that it allows me to say, look, these large-scale anisotropies of the cosmic microwave background radiation are in fact part of the cosmic microwave background radiation, as opposed to the alternative explanation, which is that because of the Earth's movement through the Milky Way galaxy, and because of the Milky Way's galaxy with movement with respect to the rest of the universe and the cosmic microwave background radiation as it was at the time of the last recombination after the Big Bang, or time of the last scattering, it argues that the CMB dipole map is actually due to a Doppler shift effect. In fact, I've got some very good graphics to show this. So here we are. Here are the graphics. So the CMB dipole is reckoned to be was reckoned to be due to the movement of the sun and the Earth and the Milky Way galaxy through the universe relative to the frame of reference of the in which the cosmic microwave background sky is in. And because we're moving towards Leo and away from Aquarius, we find the explanation is that light from Leo is effectively blue shifted towards the blue end of the spectrum, and we're moving away from Aquarius. The light is red shifted to the red end of the spectrum. So we see the difference in temperature. Because that is the actual CMB dipole. We see this actual temperature fluctuation in the dipole because of this Doppler shift, and so this was believed to be due to local properties, i.e., the way Earth is moving through the universe. And so it wasn't. And so this structure is not actually considered a part of the CMB, the cosmic microwave background radiation, by the vast majority of the cosmological community, or wasn't. It's now changed because of this particular paper. So, starting with this particular paper from January 20th, 2021, people are testing this principle about the CMB dipole being due to a Doppler shift. And if it was, then we would expect the CMB to be here. But rather, from the CatWISE quasar data, the actual dipole line is over here. So this is observed. This is expected given the Doppler shift explanation, but it's over here, meaning the CMB dipole is in fact part of the microwave background radiation. What has just been released is the reproduction of these results. So a different group using the same data decided to repeat the experiment, and here this is so the red over on the left is what the model is predicting, given the Doppler shift explanation, and on the right is what is actually being found. And what's being found is that the CMB dipole, this dipole, is in fact part of the microwave background sky. So I just learned about that in the last half hour, and those two papers, the reproduction adds into this argument that I make here. It reinforces it to say that these structures are actually part of the cosmic microwave sky, and because they are part of the cosmic microwave sky, they cannot be ignored, and the only explanation that is currently on the table is the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis. See? Twin spiral pattern. That is gravitational waves, or super gravitational waves rippling out across the gravitational field of the superverse. So these are actually part of the actual structure, meaning this map here, this is the actual true map of the cosmic microwave sky. If we go to the other map, actually we just put in Planck CMB, we just get the other map. So this map that you usually see of the cosmic microwave background radiation, that's a false map, because it is cleaning the data of the dipole and all the other quadrupole, octupole, all the other maps out of there. This is an ideological map based on the idea that based on the assumption that the universe is homogeneous and isotropic. This, on the other hand, is the real map. And these papers here, and I'll put all the links down in the comment, down in the description below. These two papers here, right? I kind of knew about this one, but this one I've just learned about the reproduction of it. It hasn't quite been peer reviewed and accepted, so that's what that part is there. But it's been reproduced, and that just adds to my argument, and that's absolutely brilliant. So, in talking about the afterlife and heaven and God, I think a good way of doing it is having these supernatural events just take place in front of your eyes so you can actually see them. There's a reason why I'm reading this book here. There's a reason. And I'm reading so many other things that I'm understanding the consequences. Because the other thing that Eben Alexander goes on to explain is that there's an entire ecosystem of souls within the One Electron Universe that far predates this own universe. And how is that possible? I try to approach the argument of putting God in the context of Darwinian evolution back my original piece, it's a very hard argument to make. I framed it in the context of the Kardashev scale. It's an astrobiologist say. So the Kardashev scale basically is the measurement. Let's find it first. Okay, Kardashev. So the Kardashev scale is a way of measuring a civilization's level of technological advancement based on the amount of energy it is able to use. So, at 10 to the power of 16 watts, that we're not quite there yet. We're still type 0. We're not producing 10 to the power of 16 watts. A more advanced civilization would create, say, like Dyson spheres around their sun and absorb all the solar radiation being emitted by a star. And then a type 3 civilization is able to produce even more energy. Its civilization consumes 10 to the power of 36 watts. And that means they call it a galactic civilization. And then extrapolates out type 4, type 5. We know life exists. You're watching this video. If life didn't exist, how do you explain how you are and your self-conscious realization of it? We know life evolves. We've seen it. It's Darwin's theory of evolution. What the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis tells us is it gives birth to the superverse. It gives birth to this larger reality in which our entrapped manifold of space-time that we call our universe is growing. And my main argument for it is presenting an object of the superverse, the Bourne-2 supervoid, the spherical volume of nothingness, and the evidence, along with the evidence that galaxies flow around the volumes of these massive, massive objects. So, if you're looking for reasons why you want to believe in the superverse, there it is. You may not see it. They're not emitting photons. The fourth particle of light in the superverse, like a superphoton, as it were, is not really a photon. So they may emit radiation, but it has no meaning or effect upon our universe because our universe is itself an entrapped manifold of space-time. Just like dark matter inside our universe affects the path of light, but we can know nothing about it. Except that they glow in the gamma ray radiation. And that which creates there's a whole argument about the black hole information paradox, and I answer the information paradox by saying, well, look, that light, those photons are coming from being emitted by the subverse. So unity is reached. Unity is because it is a lot of unity in how Hawking originally described it that caused the whole black hole information paradox to arise, and why it's sort of part and parcel of physics for modern physics for the last 30, 40 years or so. But it is presenting an object of the superverse that I show that the superverse is a very, very real thing, and the scale of it. Until I saw the Bourne-2 supervoid, I had some concepts, But in the moment I saw it, the Big Bang Hypernova Hypothesis was born because I had a star that was big enough to actually, whose weight and mass is big enough to explain the entire scale of our universe as we observe it. But the superverse is a mirror copy of our own. In fact, our universe inherits its shape and structure and behavior from the surrounding superverse because the fields that make up our universe have been derived from the fields of the surrounding superverse, which have been scaled down and crunched in a big crunch at the event horizon of the black hole that is born in the Big Bang Kilonova, and it is born down and then reborn as two trapped manifolds of space-time that inflate outwards out into the superverse. And essentially it is what I'm just trying to find the animation. This one. The visualization of what I have just described for you. The inflation of our trapped manifold of space-time is our universe being on a smaller scale of the surrounding superverse. Now, the importance of the superverse being exactly like our universe, because it is our parent universe and our universe is a child of the superverse. It means that if life arises and the pattern of life arises as a consequence of fractal geometry being a cosmological principle and a kilonova is the philosopher's stone, then the consequence is that the superverse must also have life and given birth to life. So life predates the Big Bang itself. God is external to the universe. That's a theological interpretation, but I think it's the general doctrine. I think within the Catholic Church, Catholic and Protestant churches, is that God is external to creation itself, But the Big Bang Kilonova hypothesis basically says, look, you don't need a God to create the entire universe. You've got a natural phenomenon that can actually create it for you. So how do you account for what Eben Alexander talks about in the afterlife? Where's that coming from? Well, it's coming from the superverse, and the superverse, being a fractal pattern, mirrored pattern of our own universe, gives birth to life, gives rise to life, and that life evolves, and so I apply the same logic of the Kardashev scale in terms of trying to classify life of the superverse. Eventually, you're going to get a Type 3 civilization which is able to harness the power of black holes. Or in the case of a life form of the superverse, it can harness the power of black holes inside the superverse. And so what's the consequences of that really meaning? I think the consequences are fairly, very, very, very clear. That inside the One Electron Universe, there is this, there are, this is where it goes from supposition to trying to, like, you really start getting into theology, because this is the realm of theology. But I found one explanation and cover it in the next part. So, in thinking about life forms of the superverse and what kind of effect that would have on our universe, namely, how do we explain Eben Alexander's and anyone else who is said to have had a near-death experience and traveled to the other side of what I believe is of what I believe is being inside the One Electron Universe. There is a particular quotation that I found that really helps probably capture this better than anything I could ever try and say in words. And it's talking about the difference between the spiritual realm and that of matter. It's more or less a metaphysical description of this, and it works in a number of levels, both in the context of this description. It's talking about distinguishing between that which is matter and that which is spirit, and how the two are interwoven in actual life, and as we experience it in the here and now. The dialogue is written in a master student format, where the student or the students are asking questions of the master, and the master is giving response. The student asks, "Tell us about matter. Will it survive or not?" And the master replies, "All of nature, with its forms and creatures, exist together and are interwoven with each other. They will be resolved back, however, to their own proper origin, for the composition of matter return to the original roots of their nature." So, I want to first kind of frame that particular quotation in terms of a life form of the superverse, or what I would say is a non-corporeal life form. That is, if you took Darwin's theory of evolution and took it to the most extreme, extrapolate it out to the most infinite logical conclusion, plus with the self-realization that as a civilization progresses, it becomes a more aware of exactly how nature works. So it can be a creature that understands the very, very subtleties of nature, that it can get inside the One Electron Universe and build its own ecosystem, which is what we would call non-corporeal. I think that's spiritual. There are so many names. Coming from a science fiction background, I'll Star Trek would say non-corporeal. It's a non-corporeal life form inside the One Electron Universe. But it's not just a life form, it's an entire ecosystem of immortal souls. And within that ecosystem, I would say there is, I don't know what would be the best description, be a god or goddess. Though in the particular discussions from which I'm quoting, the discussion goes on to say, like, look, spirits, Male and female exist in life, but a disembodied soul isn't a disembodied soul. The body is male or the body is female. Nowadays, it's on a range of a spectrum and a level of. It's probably the one topic of conversation that seems to be very popular, but on a biological level, it's XX, XY, and yes, you can have variations just to make sure we're inclusive and all that and everything. But in the particular passage that I'm in the particular nature of the passages I'm quoting from, the real messages, or one of the messages is that the spirit has no gender. You can be born into an immortal soul, can live its life one time as a male, then the other time as a female, and it doesn't really matter. The way Eben Alexander kind of describes his experience, the nature of the soul is to try and improve itself and improve itself and improve itself. If I was to take, if there was one constant throughout my entire life on a day-to-day basis, I would say that's a thing I've applied in my life every single day. I have never stopped learning. I have never stopped trying to reach for higher and higher. And I guess to the point where you're actually proposing the scientific origin of the universe, which is nice. But in trying to think about it in terms of biology, in terms of a life cycle of entire ecosystem of souls, at which the center is God, that comes inside the One Electron Universe, and then from that, well, the Big Bang Kilonova happens. It's inside the One Electron Universe, and time really doesn't have any meaning. Billions of years could be a second, or it could be billions of years, and from the perspective of someone inside the One Electron Universe, only 7 days have passed. I think there's quite an irony in the beginning of Genesis about that sort of thing, which is when its meaning is fully understood, then it'd be like, okay, yep, that makes sense. Just maybe not in the way we think it does. But so in terms of framing it in biology, we now exist with this ecosystem of souls inside the One Electron Universe, and an external planet upon which life is evolving and then eventually becomes what we are today. As described through Darwin's theory of evolution. And so what do you do if you're already the most advanced life form in the entire cosmos since the beginning, because an ecosystem of souls is Darwin's theory of evolution extracted to the maximum? Well, you learn how to do it again. You just forget about what you previously learned, and you learn how to do it again. The journey is everything. the destination is just a destination. That's how I feel about it. That's what I think about that. That's how I think of life. It's a journey, starts at the beginning, has an end, and on that journey, you live, you experience what you experience, and you do what you do. But then you go back afterwards, and you remember what you are, as in you are an immortal soul and that immortal soul obviously has some sort of beginning. And even these entire ecosystems of souls have beginnings. So here's one slight problem that would upset quite a lot of people about just that one argument. Well, if there's one ecosystem of souls, and at the heart of it there is a god, doesn't that imply, and there's more than one ecosystem of souls, that would imply that there are multiple gods and goddesses? That, and it's on that basis, on the basis of like, as a single human being, as much as I am become sort of an island, but no man is an island. So I think it is for God, or the God of the Bible, in terms of monotheistic belief. I don't really subscribe to that, because where there's one, there's more, and for very, very specific reasons. I would say I answer to the Apollo ecosystem of souls. That's where I would hail from. It's my belief system, and so that's what I believe. So that's fundamentally what I'm believing. But let's now think about the heat death of the universe. So what physics is, what modern physics is telling us, is that everything, well, it all comes down to entropy. Everything moves from a state of order to disorder until it finally decays, and essentially all the movement in the universe comes down. I'm just trying to think, is this a correct statement to say it's the heat death of the universe? So heat is the thing that gives animation to matter in terms of kinetic energy, that gives that in turn, and at the moment that's in full, the cycle of heat and kinetics, say in the sun and the Earth's core and in the wind. In every movement, there is a transfer of energy, and it's going from movement towards trying to find an equilibrium until everything is the same. Everything is the same temperature, and effectively, all the stars burn out. There's no more fuel. There's no more hydrogen for the stars. Everything's collapsed down into black holes, or the universe has expanded so much that everything is so separated from everything else that effectively stars die out, no new stars come into being, and the vast majority of the universe is just composed of, everything in there is composed of black holes, and black holes over time are said to evaporate from Hawking's point of view, and as they evaporate, though they take trillions and trillions and quadrillion Google years to evaporate, So we're only 13.5 billion years into the life of our universe, but after a Google number of years, everything's black holes which are just evaporating. And so, from the point of view of the superverse, what does that mean? What does the heat death of the universe mean? Or what does the heat death of a subverse mean? This is one where this is particularly where I'm probably like looking at observational evidence of what's happening in the interstellar void between galaxies. So we've got our Fermi bubbles that we see in the from the Fermi X-ray telescope. We see these bubbles of gamma radiation, and I'm saying these are entrapped surfaces of space-time that are themselves their own universes. Being inside our universe, they are subverses, and these subverses are occupying the interstellar void that in the polar regions perpendicular to the perpendicular to the intergalactic plane of the Milky Way galaxy. And this is the same for applying it to our Milky Way galaxy. I apply it to I also apply it to other galaxies. So the Andromeda galaxy will have its own bubbles, have its own subverses, and so we see these and so we have these subverses inside our universe, and like our universe is inside the superverse in a similar manner. As these subverses age, they move into the interstellar void region between galaxies. And as they decay, I think as our universe decays, I so I make the distinction that a black hole is a fundamental particle, or I see a supermassive black hole as being the atomic nucleus of an atom of the superverse. Or so in my latest writing, in the latest essay and what I'm producing a film for, I lay out I lay out my arguments on this piece. Of course, I present many arguments. One of the things one of the points of this piece is to create a prediction about how spiral galaxies form with dark halo formations around them, and why we're seeing dark matter but no dark energy at the time of the last scattering of the cosmic microwave background sky. By the way, when I say last scattering, so that's the period 200 to 300,000 years after the Big Bang event itself. The universe cools down. The plasma of the early universe has cooled down sufficiently that electrons combined with protons forming the first hydrogen atoms, and in forming the first hydrogen atoms, the plasma goes from being opaque to transparent, and thus light can start traveling across the newly transparent universe. So the light we see from the microwave background sky, what we detect in likes of WMAP and Planck missions, that light, which is now stretched to the microwave length, is coming from the time of last scattering, 200 to 300,000 years after the Big Bang event itself. Going back to the heat death of the universe, and then thinking about a black hole as being a fundamental particle, or rather actually being more a single quantum system of the superverse. And so it actually has a physical meaning in the superverse. One reason for say one primary reason for kind of equating equating black holes upon the gravitational fields to particles of the superverse is in seeing how the gravitational field of our universe reacts to dark energy. Dark energy is a negative energy that acts as an anti-gravitational force in pushing things away from it. And so as pointed out, as our universe flows around an existing object of the superverse, then we have an existing object of the superverse. So effectively, our galaxy flows around the Boötes void, but from our perspective, it creates an imprint into our universe and pushes galaxies away, and galaxies flow around the Boötes supervoid, or the local supervoid, as we can see in this observed data here. This because it's flowing around it. If I take my book here and I want to try and put my hand through it, most of the space in my hand is free space. Take a hydrogen atom, for example. It's 99.9999999999996%, I think, or thereabouts. But that's how much of it is free space. Only 0.1% of it is actually occupied by the proton and the electron that are inside the hydrogen. So this is the vast majority of this is free space. This solid book, and my solid hand, but I cannot pass my hand through it. And that is because of the repulsion between electrons. Between the electrons in the book and the electrons in my hand cannot pass through the book. It implies solidity. And so I see that with the gravitational field in how it reacts to dark energy, and that it flows around an object of the superverse. And that implies its solidity. Whatever is there in the local supervoid, or inside the Boötes void itself, whatever is there, our universe, the gravitational field of our universe is acting as if there's a solid object there, and it's flowing around that solid object, so it implies solidity. So this is why I equate the gravitational field of our universe to being like being equivalent of the electromagnetic field of the superverse. So from the point of view of an observer in the superverse, they would see black holes that exist inside our universe as particles upon the electromagnetic field. It would be like a super electron, but more I think about supermassive black holes as compared to black holes that are born from interstellar events like hypernova or kilonovas, the more I see an existing particle of the superverse, or existing chunks of the superverse, excessively, essentially, it's the fragmentation of a kilonova. So in this particular animation I want to show, I'm showing two neutron stars at the point of where they collide. And in this particular one, I show them both shattering each other from the resultant collision, and they swirl about in into forming, either being blown off into outer space or being collapsed down into the black core of the black hole. But it is these fragments, or the atomization of the two neutron stars of the superverse colliding with each other, that goes on to become the supermassive black holes that exist from the very moment of the time of the Big Bang. That's how I have my origin story for supermassive black holes. And so I'm saying, well, these are atoms of the superverse. And so coming back to the heat death of the universe, I think about it in terms of everything decays down into black holes, and those holes are the hydrogen atoms, or the atomic nucleuses of the superverse. So effectively, our universe decays back into becoming the matter of the superverse. So in thinking about a subverse, it would decay back down, and the black holes born inside that subverse would in turn be hydrogen atoms inside our universe. So it also provides an origin story for the interstellar clouds of hydrogen that exist between in the interstellar void between galaxies, and it also provides a way of testing different hypotheses about the heat death of the universe, or heat death of subverses. So that's what my line of thought about the heat death of the universe. But in turn, coming back to thinking about the what an ecosystem of souls or civilization that inhabits the One Electron Universe, as I describe it, what would the result be at the as in the heat death of the universe? And I think the quote, and hence I quote the passage I said earlier, because I think it answers it so beautifully, in such a beautiful way. All of Nate, so the quotation again from the master. All of nature, with its forms and creatures, exist together and are interwoven with each other. They will be resolved back, however, to their own proper origin, for the composition of matter return to the original roots of their nature. So, in describing the life cycle of the universe, life cycle of the physical universe, from the Big Bang Kilonova to the heat death, where it decays in the interstellar void, um, back down into particles of the superverse, or in the case of a subverse, the matter entrapped within that subverse should decay back into being clouds of interstellar hydrogen gas. In thinking about the life cycle of a life form that goes inside the one electron universe, unpacks its ecosystem, and lives inside a given universe before like almost packing up its entire ecosystem and returning back out into 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 being a separate creature of the superverse, a non-corporeal life form of the superverse, or type 3 coming from a type 3 Kardashev like civilization, having mastery over black holes, and this is a kind and and then framing it in such a way that that's why I really like that's what my belief system is, and that's what I've been led to. And coincidences like finding like the dipole, like yesterday it was or earlier from the point of view of this podcast, it was yeah, doing my description of God within the context of Darwin evolution, and then then my eyes are laid upon this, not just this paper, but its reproduction that is currently going through the peer review process. But this is an extremely important piece of evidence that allows me to make my argument about the Big Bang Kilonova and the microwave background sky. The argument fits in right here. I'm talking about the CMB dipole, i.e., this is actually a part of the cosmic microwave background radiation. I didn't have that one argument, the evidence for it and the reproduction of it until after I just gave that description of trying to classify God in a Darwinian evolution. So that's why I believe in this sort of stuff, because these kind of little coincidences happen again and again and again and again. Majority of which I have documented in here, where we just talk about the Grail, and we're going to I talk about here in my beliefs, but more recently was stuff that happened at the end of last year. It is something I document really a lot here. I particularly document the decoding, my interpretation of the seed of life symbols, the two seed of life symbols upon the sorcery. And yeah. Read it for yourself. What happened? I'm backing it up with video and stuff. I'm backing it up with Westminster Cathedral's sacred site, and well, anti-gravity is coming down the pipeline. I keep coming back to the quote from this dialogue, and so I want to go into a bit more. So all of nature, with its forms and creatures, exist together. So that's how we are today in the universe, and are interwoven with each other. So this works on multiple levels. One, entanglement. Everything, it, the arrow of time as we experience it inside the photon vacuum space, i.e., as my senses observe it, photons hit my eyes and my brain registers them. What we experience as the externally as the arrow of time, the observable arrow of time as we know it, emerges from quantum mechanics, both in terms of entropy and in terms of entanglement. So this is probably more getting to physics that I'm not really very familiar with the very details of quantum mechanics. But the general argument is that because of all the entanglement between all the various particles, everything's interconnected. An electron in my pinky could be quantumly entangled with a particle in the Andromeda galaxy or the other side of the universe, and it's been entangled since the very moment of creation in the Big Bang Kilonova. So when it says interwoven, it is on a level that is the physical field itself, the physical omnipresent field that exists throughout the entire universe, that is now completely entangled and interwoven together, and it's interwoven together following a fractal design. That fractal design gives rise to life. And second law of thermodynamics, entropy leads a system from being from a state of ordered to disordered. Disordered gives rise to nonlinear dynamics. Nonlinear dynamics give rise to more and more chaotic systems, and those chaotic systems then go on to form fractal patterns but it's the same fractal pattern at every single level of scale. Self-similar patterns repeat, irrespective of scale. And that's all captured in that one first sentence. All of nature, with its forms and creatures, exist together and are interwoven with each other. The next part says, they will be resolved back, however, to their own proper origin, for the composition of matter return to the original roots of their nature. So, the composition of matter return to the original roots of the nature. That's like the heat death of the universe. The heat death of the universe. We exist as electrons and protons, but the natural form that everything will decay into will become black holes, and black holes are atoms of the superverse, hence original roots of their nature, or a subverse, or this argument works with a subverse. Particles that once belonged to our universe and then fell into the black hole and then were ejected out into a given subverse. That they form their own particles which have meaning inside that entrapped bubble space-time, but then they decay back into becoming hydrogen atoms that we can then see in the interstellar void between galaxies. So that's why I love this quote, because it works on in a very fractal sort of way, because you can apply it to that. The context in which it is being talked about is more about matter and death and the separation of spirit. So the teaching here being you have matter, but then you have the important part the immortal soul, and and, and the teaching goes on about the journey of the soul. Oh, so le so in terms of thinking about life and death, as we know it. So before eh, the, the sperm and the egg come together, and the egg is fertilized, and from that moment on, the cells divide, and life is born. And at that point, the soul starts coming into the body of the newly forming body within the womb, and becomes interwoven with with the material matter of that is body. So effectively, the soul that has been born into life is coming in from the one electron universe, and its information is being infused with the matter that exists within the egg cluster that is slowly growing inside the womb, that will become the newborn child. And in saying they'll be resolved back, however, to their own proper origin. So, moment of death. So, the creature, the human, whoever, the alien, lives their life, and then, but because of the nature of entropy, eventually death occur death occurs, and and the soul moves back. And in an instance, it goes travels through the tunnel of light, as it were, back into the one electron universe, to the original roots of their nature, back. And so essentially, it's been born back inside the one electron universe, from the ecosystem of souls, from that spiritual realm that exists inside the one electron universe. It's been born back. It's going back to its original roots. So let's have a so with all that said about that one single quotation. Let's have a look at the context of the quotation, which is coming from the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. At the end of the day, it is I run out of words for this. It is what it is. Here it is, the Grail. To accompany that, I think that is a beautiful quote, and the specifics of the quote are: Jesus has just been resurrected. He's been crucified. He's been dead for 3 days, and he's come back to life. And the apostles and his followers are seeing this, going, how can this be? And they're trying to understand the metaphysics of it. And so at the very beginning, we have the discussion of Christ that has risen, and is telling them the great secret. Tell us about matter. Will it survive or not? Before that, we don't pages 1 to 6 are missing, and the papyrus script on which it was found picks up the conversation at this specific point here. The Savior answered, being Christ, who has risen from the dead before ascending and he hasn't ascended to heaven, says to his apostles, one of them being Peter here, all of nature with its forms and creatures exist together and are interwoven with each other. They will be resolved back, however, to their own proper origin, for the composition of matter return to the original roots of their nature. Those who have ears, let them hear this. So it's not my word for, it's not my description of, I'm not using my description of like how I phrase it. I'm using that which is considered the Son of God in Christianity. I think that says more than anything I could ever possibly say. And with that being said, I think we'll wrap it up there. In the Big Bang Kilonova Hypothesis, it is part of a plan, and it is like all one can do is oh crap. So I've just realized I've been recording the desktop all along with this. Okay. Right, we'll wrap it up there.